Greetings, dear, precious, beautiful spirit soul that you are. It feels so good to be right here in the elements, in the earth, the oxygen, the water, the sun, the fire. These are our creative abilities. Now my topic is this: beyond relative good and evil. Beyond relative good and evil. See, there's all this thing out there. Some people say, oh, there's no good and evil. It's just all your own thing. You can do what you want. There's no good or evil. Well, that's not true. And it is true at the ultimate highest level, but at that level of who we truly are, we're not even in this realm. We're so absorbed in the divine, in the spirit soul divine that we are. And here's this whole thing, this whole argument, good and evil, and say, we don't judge good and evil because we have good and bad. Well, in the relative world, what happens with the words good and bad, it has to do with your cultural upbringing or your religious training or the nation you're living in or the color of your skin and your religion, and all of these things are concepts and beliefs that we have accepted as being true and absolute and real, and that's just the way everything is, when those are all part of the theater, part of the drama, part of the creation, part of the manifestation of this reality. And so when most people are judging good and bad, it doesn't have to do with absolute goodness, there is no evil in it. Just like in the absolute, there is no relative. Relativity is not needed. But the relativity comes from the absolute goodness, purity of who we are as a spirit soul. And how you know that by just divine logic. Deduction is very easy, because if you can perceive your thoughts, basically you're not your thoughts, right? Because you're perceiving them and you're listening to them, or you are speaking them, or it's being spoken through you. Very interesting. So what we call good and bad then, it has to do with some kind of programming, some kind of conditioning, some kind of hypnotic trance or command or concept or whatever. So it changes all the time, but absolute goodness never changes. So then when you go good and evil, so then what you would have then in the relative world, you'll have people doing good and then people doing bad, people doing it. But there's also what you want to be manifesting is your absolute goodness wherever you are, because you're always right there. You never go anywhere else than right there. Because you say, wait a minute. No, that's around. That's happening through you, around you, whatever you think it is. You're sensing it, but you're still right there. And when you really get that, is that you've always been right there, and you will always be right there. And when you let yourself go into the mind of the judging and evaluating all the time, well, there is the higher sense of the witness. So when you get out of that, where you let good and bad jerk you around all the time, you get up to the level of perception. You can see people doing good and you can see people doing evil, which is harming another living entity, animal or human. And this whole thing of animal killing and animal slaughter and being in every kind of conceivable product that we're using and buying, and then also how much of the human slaughter and use of animal bodies and animal parts in actually even foods that people are eating, and in every single aspect. This is not a true divine reality. This is some kind of a false overlay that has brought evil to be up equal to goodness, because if you have good and evil, good and bad, or evil and good and evil as two absolute forms, then they actually create each other. But absolute goodness does not create evil, because evil simply means living in opposition to your true self. That means not being who you are, but that you are co-opted and manifesting and creating a false reality where people are suffering and animals are suffering horrendously in so many different ways, because we are, you're going to get this, and this comes from the Vedas, which is so great. A lot of it, I like I do the Srimad Bhagavatam, and I really love Canto 11 so much. Any of you who are following that, so cool. If you could even grab a Canto 11 of the Srimad Bhagavatam, just got so much great knowledge right there in that. And it validates everything else you've been doing, because, see, absolute truth always is validated. And you will find that absolute truth when you know what to look for. You can find it. And you also know what to look for, that is false, because it isn't good for everyone. It makes some people slaves and some people masters. It makes fighting and war between female, male, when there are actually two aspects of the one divine being. Then you get people to then focus on the body and the genitals and all of that, and their sexual pleasures and experiences, and all of this is such a diversion from the true, and it does not lead to the happiness, the satisfaction, the fulfillment, the joy, the life, and all that people think that they've been told that it is. It is not. And when you really look at pleasure, is your nature. And we are the pleasure of the divine. And the divine takes pleasure in our pleasure, and we take pleasure in the happiness of others, which is purely a ethereal, beyond ether experience that is beyond the relative. Because as a witness, you can perceive the relativity. You can perceive what people are doing, and what you want to do. The more you do goodness in this realm, the more it actually empowers you. Because the more good that you are doing, the more goodness you are feeling, and the greater your opportunities are to transcend hellish conditions and hellish experiences. And you want to say that of the terrifying, or, and as I've always said, the mind is the greatest terrorist weapon ever invented, and it is an invention, and it is an agreement. It is a non-thing, in a sense, that operates as a thing controlling humanity, and that's why you want to know that. So you don't say there is no good or evil going on in the world, and you're not looking, and because this or that. No. You're then part of the terror. You're then part of the war. You're part of the crime, because you're playing the duality reality game of my work is good and yours is bad, or I'm this and that. But that does not mean you're not observing and witnessing what's going on. And then what you do as you operate for goodness, you're not operating against evil. You're not operating against anyone. You're not against any divine being. You are only, in a sense, for. I'll tell you why it's like this. Say if you had a physical problem. It's got both a psychological and a biological cause. So isolate, what's the psychological? What is it that set you up for this kind of a thing? And a lot of it could also be erroneous information as to food to eat. It could be the electronics of all the cells, of the towers, of the stuff in the sky, and the biz, and and all this stuff going on. And the real key is that as you center on your own beingness, and you know that you are separate from, in that sense, of the mind and the physical body and this reality, you also get how you are also, in a sense, cause or co-cause or co-manifester of it in some reality by your agreement, by what you believe are true, what you think is good. Because you see, in some places, what some others think is bad, other people think is good. But in the absolute goodness, it's good for everybody. It does not have some masters and some slaves. There are no masters or there are no slaves. Because it's not necessary. When you know who you are a manifester. and you know who you are, and you're being who you are. And so whatever is this game or this challenge or this opportunity we have or what we've done or how we got ourselves here, you're always right there. And the key is in the right there. Are you bringing in all of the stuff from the past? Are you bringing in concepts? Are you bringing in beliefs? Is your mind tormenting you and you're thinking, wait a minute, this is not you? And then the key is to know the absolute goodness is who you are. And when you do good, that means when you help others. And a lot of people say, well, you know, you've had a lot of wealth in your life, Terry. I said, yes, I have, and I've always used it. You know, I've built schools in India and places and a huge big center over there for people that helps the poor, an Ayurvedic healing center. And people can study, has a huge library and you know, helping people with Vedic knowledge. And Vedic knowledge doesn't eliminate other people's knowledge. When you're really looking for knowledge, all the knowledge that really hits at the heart of it is just the truth. It's all harmonious. And it's what people want to segregate and say, well, my God wrote this book, and your God wrote that book, and then my God wants to kill your God. No, that's fake. That's relativity. That's duality. That does not exist in the divine, in the sublime. That's not who we are. But when we're in this reality, you see, then stay at being who you are, but then you operate in the mode of goodness, working for the welfare of children and protection of them, the welfare of cows and their protection, the welfare and the protection of animals, the welfare and the protection of women, of men, of seniors, of people. But the real key is to bring forth the true, real knowledge for everyone. And then there's the knowledge people have. Well, yeah, I have the black magic knowledge and the knowledge of the rituals and the knowledge of this and the numerology and the alphabet. Great, we don't need your stuff. You can't lose with the stuff we use. Thanks, Reverend Ike. But you cannot, because you don't play winner or loser. You don't play that game, but you also aren't taken away by the, oh, well, there's no good or evil, it's all in your mind. Well, yes, it is in your mind. And when it has any intention within us to harm or hurt a living entity, another being, for our own pleasure, enjoyment, or survive any way like that, unless we are being threatened and attacked of some kind, you see. And that always is that you must do whatever you need to do in the moment, and you will always know what to do when you are in the divine. And this is the solution, you see. This is the medicine. This is what it's all about, and you don't have to go anywhere, but it's to know it and to get that knowledge and to help you in any way to fully recognize and realize who you are now. Forget you're too old or you're too young or you're there this or you're that or you got to survive out there. I've invested millions of dollars, or whatever you want to call it, in my consciousness. And making choices, oftentimes that eliminated possibilities for me to have billions of dollars. But you know what? Who would gain the world and lose herself?